Hello, I'm Sherry Sturman, Director of Crayola Education. We're excited that Harper Kids is collaborating with Crayola on the Read Along, Draw Along event. I'd like to introduce Bruce Hale, who has written over 70 children's books, and Illustrator Guy Francis, whose art can be found in many publications, including picture books, early readers, chapter books, children's games, and educational software. We've heard that one of his favorite characters to draw is Clark, the friendly shark that we're going to learn more about soon. Bruce, I'd love for you to tell our viewers about your, what is this, Olympic gold medal in long distance procrastination? And that, how does that award and the many other fun things that you do inspire your creativity?
Guy can probably back me up on this. Procrastination is an important part of creativity because you delay and you delay on starting on something, and then finally the deadline is looming and you go, okay, I'm going to get creative. And that's pretty much strong motivation. I feel like I draw a lot of inspiration from all the different things I do, from acting, from making music, like I sing with the salsa band here in Santa Barbara. And every aspect of creativity feeds into other aspects. Like, for example, I use my training in acting because I am inhabiting these characters as I write them. And so I'm imagining what Joey Mackerel sounds like in my mind, you know, like, hey, Joey Mackerel here. So I write with his dialect in mind. And yes, there's inspiration all around us.
Your characters radiate humor. They're funny, vulnerable, and human-like. Please tell us how you're able to use the humorous words that Bruce writes to create these fun illustrations that we see in the Clark the Shark books. How does your creative process work?
That's a really, really great question. And it was interesting listening to what Bruce just said, because the same thing happens to me. I kind of inhabit the characters as well. I read Bruce's words and my imagination turns on and I start imagining all these wonderful characters, where they live, what they wear, how they smell, you know, everything about them. All those pictures start building up inside my head. And then so I build all the pictures in my head. And then I guess my job is that I have to take my imagination out of my head and put it on paper so everybody else can enjoy what's going on inside of my head. And Bruce makes that super, super easy because his words are so full of energy and life. And it was just really, when I first heard who Clark was, I had no problem imagining him in my head. It was just a matter of getting him on paper so that everybody else could see what he looks like. And that's been my process with everything that I draw. You have to really imagine it and then put it on paper.
Before we hear the story, let's talk about the main character. Kids can relate to Clark's very boisterous behaviors and his positive intentions. Please talk about an important message in the series, that Clark often feels misunderstood. He's trying to be friendly, but he plays in ways that overwhelm others. Or he's very excited and misunderstood as being rude. What advice do you have for the kids who often feel misunderstood or that it's difficult to fit in?
The first thing to remember is that almost all of us feel misunderstood at some point. So you're not alone. And just because people don't get what you're trying to do doesn't make you a bad person. You know, there's not something wrong with us just because people aren't responding to us in the way we like. However, I remember an old teacher of mine once said that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So if you're acting a certain way and you're not getting the response you like, instead of thinking you're a bad person, just try doing something different and see if you get the response you're looking for.
Bruce, please read Clark the Shark.
Whoop, careful, we got some land sharks here. All right, so here's the tale of Clark the Shark. In all the wide blue seas, in all the wide blue world, the top school for fish was Theodore Roosterfish Elementary. And of all the fish, said Theodore Roosterfish, the biggest and the strongest was Clark the shark. Clark loved school. He loved his teacher, Mrs. Inky Dink. He loved to play upsy-downsy and spin-a-majig with his friends. Clark loved his life. "School is awesome," he shouted. "Less shouting, more reading," said Mrs. Inky Dink. "Lunchtime is sweet," screamed Clark. "Hey, munch your own lunch," said his best friend, Joey Mackerel. "Recess rocks," bellowed Clark. "Hey, you're playing rough, Clark," said the other kids. Yes, Clark loved his life with all of his sharky heart, but he loved everything way too much. He was too loud. He was too wild. He was just too much shark for the other fish to handle. After a while, no one would play with Clark. No one sat with him at circle time. No one ate lunch with him. Even his best friend, Joey Mackerel, said, "Cool your jets, Clark. You're making me crazy." One day, Clark asked Mrs. Inky Dink, "What's wrong with everyone?" She patted his fin. "Now, Clark, sometimes you play too hard, you work too hard, and gosh, you even help too hard." "But life is so exciting," said Clark. Mrs. Inky Dink told him, "There's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes the rule is stay cool." Clark thought about that. At recess, he tried to stay cool, but he pushed the swing with too much zing. "Yikes!" cried Joey Mackerel. "Sorry," said Clark. "I forgot." At lunch, Clark tried to stay cool, but everything smelled so good, he munched a bunch of lunches. "Hey, we're starving," said his friends. "Sorry," said Clark. "I forgot." In class, Clark tried to stay cool, but a good book got him all shook up. "Now, Clark," said Mrs. Inky Dink, "this isn't the time or the place. Tell me, what's the rule?" "Stay cool." "Hey," said Clark, "that rhymes." Then he got a big idea in his sharky head. "Maybe if I make a rhyme, I'll remember every time." Yeah. The next day, he put his plan to work. In class, when lessons got exciting, Clark wanted to bounce up out of his seat. Instead, he told himself, "When teacher's talking, don't go walking." And what do you know? It worked. "Attaboy, Clark," said Mrs. Inky Dink. Clark grinned. Lessons are fun. At lunch, everything smelled so yummy. When Clark wanted to eat and never stop, he told himself, "Only munch your own lunch." And it worked again. "Way to go, Clark," said his friends. Clark grinned. Lunch is fun. At playtime, Clark told himself, "Easy does it. That's the way. Then my friends will let me play." And playtime was fun. Once more, Clark loved his life. But then, dun, 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 a shadow fell across the playground. A ginormous shadow with tentacles galore. "It's a new kid, and he looks scary," said Joey Mackerel. "Swim for your lives." The squid squashed the slide, and he snapped off the swings. "Oops, my bad," said the new kid. "Wait," said Clark. "He just wants to play. Let's find a way." Clark swam at the new kid with all his might. He played harder than he ever had before. Upsy-downsy and spin-em-a-jig. Why, he even made up a new game, Tail Wumpa-Lumpus. Woo! Wow, that was fun, said the new kid, and he finally settled down. Clark told him, if you want to come to school, you've got to stay cool. That's right, Clark, said Mrs. Inky Dink, and thanks for taking care of our new classmate, Sid the Squid. Hooray for Clark the Shark, everyone cheered. Hip, hip, hooray. That night, Clark's mother asked, what did you learn at school, dear? And he told her, well, there's a time and a place for everything. Sometimes you stay cool, but sometimes a shark's gotta do what a shark's gotta do.
Guy, please demonstrate how our young artist can draw this special character. Teach us some of the fun facts about sharks that you've learned when you were illustrating Clark.
First of all, I'm gonna start by getting some blue paper because Clark is underwater. My first thing I do when I'm drawing Clark is I kind of start with a circle like this. And then I kind of would start by making it a little bit of a D shape. Do you see how that's kind of shaped like a D? Like that. That will be his head. And then lightly again, I'm going to make kind of another tube, but I'm going to curve this one. This is kind of a box that's curved right here. See that? And then for his tail, I'm just going to continue this long curve here and bring it around like this. And then we can stick kind of his tail on there. And I went right off the paper, and that's okay. We don't have to always be on the paper. But you can see already that's kind of Clark's shape. So now we'll go in and we'll draw some of his other features of his face. So I follow this little curve around his head. And if I bring it off just a little bit, that would be where his nose will go. And I put a line right here. So you see how it kind of curves around. And then I'm going to bring this line and bring it up into the middle of the circle somewhere. This is where his smile goes. And then I'm going to bring the bottom part of his smile, something like that. Oh yeah, now he's starting to look like a shark. Right above his little, where his mouth connects right here, I'm going to put a little half circle for his eye, because that kind of makes him look like he's smiling. And I put a little, again, another little half circle, and then a little circle inside for his eye. Now, one of the funny things about Clark, and that's not really real on sharks, is that his other eye kind of floats out in the middle of the ocean. That's not how it's supposed to be, but that's where his eye goes. And I can put little eyebrows above that. From the tip of his nose to his smile, I put a very light line like this. That's kind of where his skin goes from gray to white. And then down on this side of his face, I will come down and I kind of do little steps. A couple little steps. That's where his white part of his skin goes. And then I will put in some lines for his gills. Clark has 4 lines for gills. A real great white shark will have 5. I will draw his hat next, because Clark's hat, this was one of the fun things about Clark when I started drawing him. I always made his hat float above his head. That's one of the clues that I can give you that he's underwater. Another one of the clues that he's underwater is I would always stick, like bubbles. That helps us know where he lives. So his hat is kind of a C shape with a little circle underneath. And then I just put a little bit of a thing on that side like that, and that makes his hat. And then I will put a little circle in there. His teeth are great big triangles. And you can put as many or few as you want. And then I put the bottom row of teeth, big triangles. Inside his mouth, he's got a great big tongue. So I put a curve here and a curve here that kind of makes his tongue. And then the last thing I need to do on his face is I got to think of where the back of his mouth comes down. And I think it's going to be like right here. So that would make this part of it all colored in. So his shirt, like I said before, is kind of this weird square shape. Now on that shape, I'm going to put another great big D, just like we did for his head. But this D will be his sleeve of his arm. And then we have kind of a bent triangle for his fin right there. Coming off this side, we'll have a little bit of his shirt showing. So that's kind of a rectangle right here. And then I put his triangle fin right there. And then he's kind of waving at us because Clark likes to wave. I'll just darken these a little bit. His fin down here. Oops, I went a little bigger than I thought. But then there's also a little bit where the white of his belly shows. And that would be just kind of cutting that in half right there. Okay. Now we got Clark going there. Oh, I didn't put nostrils. He needs nostrils. Everybody needs to be able to breathe. I don't know how to draw that other sense that Bruce was talking about, the electrical sense. Oh, one thing that sharks need that make them, that's what we identify sharks with, is a great big fin on their back. Clark's fin always has a little notch in there. I don't know why, but I kind of imagined that maybe he was playing too hard and got a boo-boo, and now he's got a notch. So there's Clark. Now, if we want, I'll show you some of the things I do when I start to color Clark. And I'm going to start with this big fat marker because I like black outlines. I'm going to start with a great big black outline around Clark like this. Maybe I'm going to switch to another marker. Let's try one of this. This is the washable marker. It's got a sharper point, and I like that. I'm going to put his teeth because it's a little bit of a thinner black line. So I'm going to use that marker for the thin line. Let's do his eye with this marker as well. His eyebrows, his nostril. I think this next line I'm going to switch to I found this one. This is a permanent marker. I liked it because it's a really thin black line. Because the line between his gray and his white doesn't need to be really, really strong. Quickly, I'll finish all these other little drawing. Now the only thing that's left to do is add some color. So let's start with gray. Clark is gray. I'm going to try some, these are oil pastels. All of these colors are so really fun and wonderful to work with. Okay, let's go with some white because Clark's got a lot. He is mostly gray and white with red stripes. So he's got his shiny white teeth. He's got his belly. This would work with crayons instead of if you don't have oil pastels. Let's try some, oh, I probably need some pink. What kind of color should I use for pink? Let's use a crayon pink. There's a pink right there. His tongue will make kind of a crazy pink color. Like his hat. Let's do his hat in kind of this. This is the, what is this, a washable marker? That's a nice one. That works and makes a nice red. A little yellow spot right there for his hat. Let's try a different red. This is a different kind of marker. I think it's called a project marker, but when you color with this one, it feels really creamy. I really like this one. Okay, one more stripe right there, and one on his sleeve out there. Okay. Well, how'd we do? Do you think that looks like Clark?
Just like Clark says, school is awesome. And getting to school in the ocean can be a lot of fun too. Please show our viewers how to draw a submarine school bus and tell us what inspired that innovative vehicle.
That's what everybody writes to school, but if you take those words and put them backwards, look what it spells. Sub. I pictured kind of like a bus, a shape that kind of looks like kind of a square, but more pointy on one side. It's just kind of a weird oval, isn't it? There's no real shape to it. But that's the shape I thought that a submarine would look like, the main body of a submarine. On the top of the submarine, it has a tower, and it's just kind of a square sitting on top like that. I put another little square right here, and that's a window for the person to see out of. Okay. On top, it needs a little bit of a periscope. So I'm going to put a periscope right there. And it's just a circle that would come and connect like that. It's like a L shape right there. And then I just have like another little on the submarine in the book. It just has another little thing right there, kind of like maybe an antenna, so that they could speak to people on top. Clark's submarine also has right here a ladder that kind of comes up and hooks onto the top of the sub bus. So there's a ladder right there. We'll put some steps on it. And then right here, on this part here, you need a hatch to get into it. So I start with like a long square, and I put a little half circle on top of it, and then a little box there. And then this would just have a big circle wheel on it. That's what they use to open submarine hatches. Now, a submarine needs to be able to turn and move around in the ocean. So I put a little kind of a square thing right there and a little square thing right here. This is what the fin of the submarine will have hook onto. So the tail will be like a big kind of square like this that hooks onto here, and then it comes all the way up to there. In right between there's the propeller would be in here. Well, and it's just kind of two big teardrop shapes right there. On my submarines, I like to put seams. Let's put 2 seams on there. That's where they welded the submarine together, and maybe it needs bolts that hold it together like that, because it has to, when a submarine is underwater, it has to withstand a lot of pressure. And then you need to be able to look out of your submarine. So I put portholes. So there would be, porthole is like a big circle. Let's put 3 of them. 1 on each section. Again, your submarine can look like anything you want it to. There's no rules. And then I like to put another circle around each one of those, like that. And then on the circles, I put little tiny circles. Again, make it look like there's some bolts. Clark's submarine also has a little circle right here that is a light that shines down on the ground. And while we're talking about ground, we might as well put some ground in here. So we'll just make it like the ocean floor is kind of sandy, like that. And in all the Clark and Shark books, there's always some coral on the bottom. And when I draw coral, it just is kind of bumpy and weird shapes. It doesn't matter. But then I put like holes inside it. That could be some coral. Let's put 2 pieces of coral on here. Yeah, like something like that. And then maybe we put some funny little underwater sea plants too. Just squiggle lines like grass that is waving in the ocean currents. Maybe let's put one behind this piece of coral that goes way up. Maybe 2. Grass needs friends too. Okay, maybe some bubbles. Got to have some bubbles coming out of the submarine as well. All right, so there's my sketch. Let's do the same thing we did before with Clark. I will hurry and do a fat outline. And I've already tested this, my yellows on here. And I think my oil pastel, again, is my brightest yellow for showing you guys how to color. Do submarines have to be yellow? Nope. But Clark's is because it's a school bus. Watch, I'll put, just for fun, I'll put Clark looking through the window. There he is. I always wanted to go in a submarine and play around with the periscope. I thought that would be so much fun. Does that show up? That's it. I just colored the window kind of blue. I don't know what color the inside of the submarine is, but I'm going to say blue. Here's our light. Maybe I could make that light shining, a beam of light out here on the ground. That might be fun. For the sand on the bottom of the ocean. Does that look like? Yeah, that'll work. I'm kind of using the side. That's one fun thing you can do with crayons is use the side instead of just the point, because that makes it feel like it's really, really wide. Let's make our corals purple today. I think in the books, I always make them black and then I decorate them with colorful coral, like little animals and corals that live on top of the rock. So, but we'll just use purple for right now. We could probably even use some glitter pens, or the ocean is so full of colorful things that we could use whatever we want. We do need some green, don't we? There's some green for the seaweed. That was one thing I used to get scared about in the ocean. It wasn't sharks. It was like I didn't like the feeling of seaweed when it touched my legs. Does anybody ever have that feeling? Okay. Well, there we go. There's a submarine. And that's how I drew the submarine for Clark the Shark. Hopefully you guys can draw your own and have fun exploring different shapes, different colors, putting different passengers inside, and just have a lot of fun with it.
That was great, Guy. How clever to turn the word bus backwards and come up with sub. Can't wait to see what kind of school vehicles our viewers create. Now that you've seen Guy's illustrations, it's your turn to draw. Grab some crayons, paint sticks, or markers and paper. Think about how you'll draw Clark. What position will he be in? Or what activity will he be doing? And how about that submarine school bus? Wouldn't that be a fun way to go to school? You could draw that or any vehicle, any innovative way that you would travel to school under the sea. Well, kids of all ages are busy drawing. I want to mention to parents and teachers, you can dive into more colorful learning by signing up to receive the free creative learning resources delivered straight to your email box every month. Be the first to know about events like this one and more. Throughout this book, we see how kindness and friendship, how Clark celebrate his love of life and build relationships with others. Before we close the program, what last advice would each of you like to share with our viewers that would help them think about kindness and friendship?
Give everybody a chance. I think there's a lot of people that we feel scary or scared, or like when Clark met Sid the squid, because we don't know them or we haven't been around people like that, that sometimes we're scared. And that kind of makes us want to treat them unkindly. But if we just give everybody a chance and just think, you know what, I want to get to know them. And as soon as we start to know someone, all the scary stuff seems to go away, and then we can be friendly and kind to them.
I think for me, one of the most important things is really putting yourself in your friend's shoes and really listening to them on a deep level and hearing what they have to say, rather than pushing your own agenda as Clark does in that book. But if you just really get where the person is coming from, it's a gift when you deeply listen to somebody. And it's one of the kindest things you can do.
We want to thank Bruce, Hale, and Guy Francis for inspiring us today. We also want to thank Harper Kids for bringing this wonderful book to the Read Along, Draw Along program. And a special thanks to all of you for joining us. Have fun swimming, rhyming, and drawing.
Aloha.
We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.